Howdy. Welcome to Cinefilm Recap. Finds the mummy of Pharaoh Ramses stirs him from his very long-term sleep.
Close by, a nightclub artist nicknamed Nene Longlegs is out in front of an audience partaking in her genuine execution to the pleased crowd. The magnificence has an enthusiastic hitched admirer named Raymond Point Renault through the abandoned roads of the city around evening time, having partaken in a decent round of cards and a magnificent 12-year-old bourbon like Aurora Borealis. As a matter of fact, these light flashes are only an optical deception exuding from Teacher Esperandiu's home. Around midnight, the Secretary of State for International Concerns. In the meantime, Ferdinand Chappard stops to piss at a metal sculpture solidly in the center of the square. Abruptly, his consideration is attracted to an uncommon peculiarity overhead. He leads a surprising trial by making objects float in the air with the force of his psyche. The storyteller lets us know that this man is an extraordinary and splendid researcher. Simultaneously, Teacher Esperandiu likewise appears to stir from rest in his loft and starts to rehash each activity of the ancient animal. The child pterodactyl, at that exact instant, challenging every one of the laws of science and rationale. A child pterodactyl hatches from an old egg that had been lying immaculate for 135 million years. The child promptly involves the image as an aid. It starts to spread its wings and steps through a couple of exam folds. Pleased Teacher Esperandiu does likewise. After a second, the pterodactyl takes off high and blasts out of the walls of the gallery of history. While genuine marvels are going on in the roads of Paris, auditor Albert Caponi is sound snoozing. Clumsily waddling its paws, attempts to get it away from the encased room. Seeing a tremendous dinosaur skeleton before him, the offspring moves extremely frightened and runs off. It stops when it sees an image of a floating pterodactyl. The artist Nene and the secretary Raymond. The sweethearts are getting back after a show when out of nowhere their vehicle is gone after by the ravenous pterodactyl. The flying reptile shakes the vehicle, making it let completely go and fall into the waterway. This time the distributing house sent her on a campaign to Egypt looking for the pharaoh's burial chamber. The young lady is accustomed to confiding in just her instinct, so obviously adheres to the directions that are portrayed in the book of Teacher Esperandiu about the secrets of antiquated Egypt. The young lady's determined conduct causes antagonism and carefulness among local people. Adele seeks after her own objectives in the endeavor. She expects to acquire the mummy of Ramses II's healer, who has significant information on medication. With respect to the genuine objectives of Adele, I will discuss somewhat later. Thus, the valiant columnist, alongside her assistants and nearby fortune trackers, slides into the old treating room. She figures out how to translate the message and open the main to entry to the passage, the burial place. Having gotten what he needs, one of the gold diggers focuses a weapon at Adele, so as not to impart the plunder to her. Nonetheless, the columnist causes the crooks to notice the ground, which is covered with a combination of oil and petrol. When they attempt to enter the dim passage with lights, gold diggers attempt to sort out a protected method for getting inside. She drives the gathering into the depository and the scoundrels quickly hurl themselves voraciously at the gold and gems. The young lady, be that as it may, expects to take the stone. Out of nowhere, the taken gems on the chest of one of the pirates show some signs of life and start to choke him, while the other desperado sinks into the ground with the heap of gold, before an old revile happens upon her as well. However, she is calmed by the principal bad guy of the film, Teacher Delu. He arranges his gatekeepers to shoot the young lady for endeavoring to loot the burial chamber. She tosses the lit lighter on the ground, after which blazes promptly cover the entry and start to seek after Adele quickly. Yet, the young lady figures out how to hop into the stone casket with the mummy, and it in a flash falls underground with her, going by the crushed fortune trackers. Luckily, Adele figures out how to make do, and her stone coffin floats up securely while in a waterway. Teacher Dilu, saved from the burial place, is angry and puts forth himself the objective of dispensing with the rude writer at any expense in the interim. Auditor Capone has worried following the fresh insight about the sad demise of the conspicuous authority. Regent, by early afternoon the insight about the pterodactyl assault in Point Renault's corrupt issue with an artist was all around the information in Paris. Gossipy tidbits about the ancient animal threatening the city arrive at French President Armand Fair. The man doesn't trust the fabulous stories from the outset. However, during a phone discussion, he sees the pterodactyl in the window himself. The stunned president sends a request to address the pterodactyl case, where teacher Menard and his collaborator Egis Borovsky concentrate on the scene. They choose to conceal reality from the examiner that they found the remaining parts of an old egg and a messed up window. We witness Assessor Capone by and by showing miracles of allowance and not understanding that the wrecked enormous egg directly before his eyes has a place with the pterodactyl. A historical center worker guides the officials to teacher Esperandieu, who additionally represents considerable authority in the Jurassic time. Right now, the flying reptile dives into the old researcher's home, trusting him to be his parent. At the point when the officials show up at his home, the pterodactyl becomes irritated and appears from his concealing spot, concluding that the investigator needs to eat his posterity. The antiquated animal destroys teacher Esperandieu's loft and takes off, and the controller, terrified, orders his subordinates to quickly keep the researcher. In the interim, Adele Blanc-Sec gets back from her dangerous excursion with a colossal container. To stay away from pointless inquiries from anybody, she misleads the columnist about having brought a woodwind from her excursion that incapacitates any individual who contacts it. Back at her condo, she needs to stand by listening to her maid Miranda mumble about how her innumerable trinkets from different nations. The youthful individual is moreover a fit scientist, but up until this point, he fills in as a partner educator in the expert flower bed at the display. His energy for science is almost pretty much as strong as his excitement for the valiant Adele, who has captivated Zborowski with her funny bone and magnificence. Concerning the young lady herself, she is continually out and about. Adele swallows down a glass of bourbon for boldness and strolls into her twin sister's room. As guaranteed, now is the ideal time to uncover the lavish columnist. Her adored sister Agatha has been totally deadened and laid up. That's what Adele trusts, having realized all the insight of the world. Teacher Esperandieu will actually want to restore the mummy healer, which thus will fix Agatha of her loss of motion. Yet, this isn't every bit of relevant information of what befell the lamentable young lady, and you will learn about it somewhat later. She gains from him that teacher Esperandieu is in jail and quickly races to his aid. The shrewd writer professes to be a legal counselor and gains a confidential gathering with the detainee. She enlightens teacher Esperandieu concerning the recuperated mummy healer and vows to assist him with escaping jail so he can start the course of restoration quickly. Right now, a genuine legal counselor shows up at the jail and the deceitful Adele is tossed out into the road. The well-known creature tracker holy person Hubert shows up in Paris and vows to get the pterodactyl. To find the old reptile, he and investigator Capone move to the actual top of the Eiffel pinnacle. Yet again, the hapless police boss neglects to eat during working hours, for the pterodactyl dumps its defecation right on his head. This fortuitous situation helps the accomplished tracker Saint Hubert verify that the old monster eats sheep around evening time. Adele attempts to slip into Esperandieu's cell once more, claiming to be an official working. Be that as it may, rather than the teacher, the young lady tracks down another detainee. He advises her that Esperandieu is to be executed the following morning. Frantic to help her close buddy, Adele chooses to involve the best weapon in her stockpile. Putting on her most lovely outfit, she comes to the gathering of the leader of France himself. She sees the pterodactyl sneaking on the top of the president's home. To save Armand, the young lady safeguards him with her body, thumping him to the ground. Be that as it may, the gatekeepers see this as an endeavor on the president's life and send the writer to the police headquarters. They don't understand that a couple of meters from them, the old reptile has set up a home where he has hauled the president's darling canine. The youthful researcher Zborowski assisted the pterodactyl with setting it up. He took the remaining parts of the old eggshell into the historical center yard and took care of the monster with hamburger. Such an extremely long time to keep the watchmen safe. The troubled and tired columnist gets back after the cross-examination, where she regretfully admits to her sister that things did not go according to plan. I think every one of us has, at least once in our lives, experienced the feeling of devastation that can now be read in Adele's gaze. The film works really hard of showing what love can do. For saving a friend or family member, you will do anything conceivable or unthinkable. In any event, raising a departed individual from the grave, her dresses and bodice and beseeches the mummy to go along with them at the earliest opportunity in the realm of the living. The young lady chooses to scrub down and read her admirer Zborowski's adoration letters. In the wake of perusing one of them, the young lady suddenly leaps out of the restroom and goes to the person's home. It just so happens in his last message, the captivated researcher told her that he had the option to tame the pterodactyl. The fearless young lady chooses to ride the monster and provides it with a boa of cools to lay out cordial contact with it. To the extraordinary astonishment of the scared Zborowski, the old reptile permits her to saddle it, and Adele takes off on it into the late evening. Morning comes. The group assembles at the square where the execution is to happen to watch the savage exhibition. Seconds before the sign, the pterodactyl, constrained by Adele, flies up to the square and lifts teacher Esperandu high up, sending the killer to the guillotine in his stead. The staff of the Historical Center of History merrily welcome the protected researcher. Nonetheless, his getaway doesn't be ignored, and the tracker holy person Hubert at last gets on the path of the pterodactyl. He focuses and precisely shoots the ancient monster in the chest. As the pterodactyl shouts in terrible agony, teacher Esperandu, who is associated with it, feels something very similar. Holy person Hubert plans to shoot one more shot. However, he is chomped on the leg by the president's canine. The infuriated teacher Menard grabs the man's weapon and pursues him off the exhibition hall grounds. The scared cries of the hapless tracker wake Assessor Caponi. Adele advises Zborowski to deal with the injured pterodactyl and hustles off to bring teacher Esperandu back home so he can resurrect the mummy prior to passing into the following scene. The young lady's concerns are justifiable, since the researcher's life is in question, yet in addition the salvation of her cherished sister. In unbearable agony, the researcher orders Adele to put old items around him and goes into a daze to speak with the mummy's godlike brain. Adele and Agatha watch hypnotized as the teacher's seat and antiquated objects take off very high. Sadly, at one point Esperandu's solidarity runs out and he falls to the floor silly. In spite of Zborowski's endeavors, the child pterodactyl faces a similar outcome. The mummy hangs over Agatha and noticed their comparative appearance. Adele recaptures any desire for saving her sister, yet the wilted man concedes that he doesn't have anything to do with medication and was a specialist during his lifetime. Adele by the name Padmesis. Subsequent to making himself some tea, he plinks down opposite the writer and requests that she let him know what has been going on with her sister. Agatha dives into recollections of the mishap a long time back, and we at last find out about the heaviness of culpability she's been hauling behind her such an extremely long time. One day during a tennis match between the two sisters, Adele hit the ball especially hard and it hit Agatha directly in the brow. As Agatha tumbled to the ground silly, a long metal hair clip flew somewhere far away from me. Accordingly, Agatha fell with the rear of her head right on top of the hair clip, and the gems pierced through the young lady's skull and cerebrum. It didn't send her to existence in the wake of death, however it caused loss of motion all through. Adele has gone on the most frantic and hazardous experiences all over the planet to figure out how to fix her sister of her burden. In the wake of paying attention to the young lady's story, Padmesis apologizes for not having the option to help Agatha. It makes reference to that close by there is a show of relics from the Pharaoh Ramses II. This news leaves the young lady in a condition of happy fervor. Around evening time, a strange organization comprising of a mummy of a researcher in an exemplary suit, a deadened young lady, and a frantic columnist goes to the gallery. Padmesis partakes in the walk around Paris at its ideal, telling terminated wisecracks to his incident. Ferdinand Chappert again picks a terrible opportunity to get back. Close to the disastrous landmark on the square, he experiences the substance of a talking mummy and swoons from shock. The old researcher loyally consents in, with a solitary development of his hand, makes the ways for the exhibition hall for his mates. He likewise effectively makes it lights out time the watchmen who rush out to meet the 12 p.m. visitors. At last, the threesome enters the corridor with the stone caskets. Padmesis offers to free Ramses' company first, so he might feel happy with awakening. Opening the burial chambers, Adele inquires as to whether there is a specialist among them, yet all response in the negative. Padmesis accumulates the puzzled subjects close to the burial place of Ramses II and really at that time delivers the pharaoh, tells Ramses of her aggravation. For a long time she has been tortured by culpability and tears for her sister, who is compelled to live like a living dead. The young lady requests that the rulers show mercy and help Agatha. Adele's miserable story hits home in Pharaoh's spirit. He arranges his dedicated doctor to analyze the deadened Agatha and help her. The healer twists around the young lady and hauls the Beretta as far away from her as possible. The mummies use vials of Ramses' organs to make a unique mixture and treat Agatha's injury with it. At the point when the company wraps conjuring up the young lady's body, Ramses II says farewell to her on the lips and leaves with his companions to walk around evening Paris. Adele approaches her sister's body and calls out to her ideally. At the point when Agatha recovers cognizance, she just was hit hard with a tennis ball, yet she doesn't realize that it has been a long time since the mishap. The cheerful Adele embraces her sister and expresses gratitude toward Padmesis for aiding her. Padmesis approaches him alongside his preserved organization and requests bearings to the Nile. Ferdinand returns to the universe of dreams while the mummies proceed with their vacationers stroll through the roads of Paris, wondering about the excellence of the design. Halting close to the Bend de Triomphe, Ramses contemplatively sees that the city needs pyramids. Not too far off, years after the fact, the Pyramid of the Louvre will show up. Obligation again intrudes on Controller Caponi from his scrumptious feast. In the meantime, an energized Zborowski climbs the steps with a colossal bunch of roses for his dearest Adele. In any case, the restored Agatha opens the entryway and illuminates him that her sister has left on a 14-day venture. The young lady coquettishly implies that his visitor might give her the bouquet. Stricken by her magnificence and cordiality, since right from the outset of the excursion everything turns out badly. The excessive columnist is sought after by two men who end up being the partners of teacher Dilu. The researcher chuckles insidiously after the flight of the boat with the wonderful name Titanic. In this manner, the story alludes to the calamity that will before long happen to the Titanic. Sadly, we don't know whether Madame Adele Sec figured out how to endure the wreck and whether teacher Dilu's partners were associated with the mishap. Nonetheless, knowing the fearless person of the principal character, we can expect that she will adapt to every one of the troubles that look for her with beauty. Who can say for sure, assuming that you had the open door, what character from world history could you rejuvenate and why? Educate us in the remarks beneath the video. If you had the opportunity, kindly consider like and subscribe into Cinefilm Recap. Gratitude for observing.